what it is, cucks. After 13 boring hours, the hater is done with his workday. And the first thing that I did was obviously order some food because I haven't eaten all day. The second thing that I did as the food arrives is do this video, cucks. The hater does it for the people. Now, before I get started on today's video, right, I want to take a moment to eulogize good old Larry the dog. CM Punk and AJ Lee's dog Larry has passed away. Now, my opinion of CM Punk and AJ Lee aside, I think they're both jobbers. I do empathize with them losing a pet. Luckily, I haven't lost a pet yet. I mean, a few fish of mine died when I was a kid, but I'm talking about like mammalian pets up in this bitch, you know what I'm saying? But I got my dog, my Ridge. If he died, I would lose my fucking mind, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't be very happy about that. So I can empathize with those two dorks, right? I feel bad for them. I hope they get past it, you know? The hater doesn't actually hate anybody for those slow kids in the back who haven't realized this yet. Now, today's video is going to be a nice video that we haven't talked about this topic in a while. I mean, we've touched on it here and there in every video, but it's the disgusting situation that we find ourselves with Cody Rhodes, right? This guy is literally the worst champion of all time, right? I think at this point, nobody can deny it. Quite frankly, not only did he ruin Roman Reigns' title run, which obviously was like, you know, done, like it had run its course, so that's fine, but he took away an opportunity from someone else to, be the guy that beats Roman Reigns. Furthermore, he ended Cena's run, which in my opinion was more consequential and less forgivable because Cena had nothing going for him, motherfucks. He had nothing going for him without that title. After that, Cena's wrestling like Dominic Mysterio. This is Cena's last year. First of all, Cena, ever since he won the world title, like back in the day, he should have never had a mid-card title, right? Like, it doesn't matter if Cena's a Grand Slam champion or not. He's John Cena, you know what I mean? Christian, who happens to be my favorite wrestler, is a Grand Slam champion. The Undertaker isn't. We're not going to pretend that Christian is better than The Undertaker, right? Even I wouldn't go that far. So with that being said, this is completely meaningless. Cena's last year should have been the most epic of years. And it started off that way to a degree, right? Right before he turned heel, everything was going perfectly. He had a great run at the Rumble. He wins the Chamber. He's going to get the title shot. And here it is. But, of course, things had to go a different way. Cody Rhodes and the other people that I've made fun of before who were part of this bullshit were responsible for basically ruining all of everything that we saw, basically, right? All of it was complete shit. Nobody could have possibly enjoyed this. And at the center of this circle jerk is the man who benefited, and that is Cody Rhodes. At the end of the day, Cena's title run and title win was another feather in his cap, right? It's no different than the Intercontinental title, right? It's not like, you know, they wanted to give him the accolade and they did, and everyone was happy about that, I think. Like, I was happy that Cena won, but I hated the match. I hated the pay-per-view. I hated the storyline. I hated basically everything. But at the center of this is not John Cena. It's Cody Rhodes. This is still part of Cody Rhodes' story. As a matter of fact, Roman Reigns, when he was the champion, pretty much he could have just dropped the title as soon as Cody Rhodes debuted, right? Because as soon as he debuted, Roman Reigns became the antagonist and Cody the protagonist, right? Nothing else mattered. You know, periodically you'd have like Logan Paul versus Roman Reigns, like these matches that have no need to happen whatsoever. These are things that are going to happen or are not going to happen, and they're going to have no bearing on anything because Roman Reigns is going to win, right? Same thing, you had like Roman Reigns versus LA Knight. Like, dude, LA Knight cannot even beat Solo Sikoa. Like, what's he doing wrestling Roman Reigns? So with all that being said, it's like, it was inevitable, right? Cody was going to win the title. You know, even if they did Roman versus Rock, that would still be a placeholder. It'd be a dream match, kind of, but it'd be a placeholder for Cody, right? It's his story, and it still is, right? Cena was just a glitch in the Matrix for a few months because realistically, all that happened was Cody Rhodes just came back. He was gone for a while. He came back. He won every single match he was in. Then he beat Cena. You know, Cody Rhodes is like Cena now, right? He's someone that cannot be defeated. And that's boring. Nobody likes that. Not even Cody Rhodes fans like that, right? So you have the Cuckster himself, right, holding this title hostage effectively, because quite frankly, nobody really gives a shit about the title anymore, right? It's axiomatic that Cody is going to be the champion. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it is, motherfucks. Like, Cody is going to be the champion, and it's going to end like that, right? Until someone is ready. And at this point, it seems like everybody that would be ready is focusing on the jobber title on Raw. So on SmackDown, we're really just on cruise control, you know? Like, as soon as Cody Rhodes won the title back from Cena, like, I think everyone kind of knew that this cocksucker is going to be holding this at minimum until WrestleMania. He could drop it at Mania because it's a big deal, but it's going to depend on who he wrestles, right? Like, there really isn't anybody that is capable of taking it from him from a kayfabe perspective, nor is there anybody who is big enough of a star, right? Like, they can force something down our throats, but realistically, it's not going to work. Honestly, the only person that's been booked strong enough is Gunther. And does anyone want to see Cody versus Gunther? I don't think anybody wants to see that. So I know that this sounds like there's other people to blame, but trust me, motherfucks, I've gone through the permutations in my head. There is nobody to blame but Cody Rhodes. This guy is content, and quite frankly, he's proud, right? He's proud of basically ruining the legacy of the WWE Championship. Like, think about who he's defended it against. You know, he defended it against Cena and lost, right? And that's it. Everybody else that he's defended it against is a mid-card nobody. You know, he's had like countless defenses against Drew McIntyre. Of course, when I say countless, I mean like 2 or 3 because he's defended the title like 5 times in the last 3 years. So a few against Cucky Owens, who keeps getting title shot after title shot despite never earning anything. And then that's it, motherfucks. That's it. He's defended the title against like 3 people over 3 years, and he thinks he's like God's gift to wrestling. Somebody needs to take this guy down a peg and remind him that he's fucking Stardust, because I believe this is getting to his head, right? A few days ago, another person whose head is getting big because of like the fact that they're back is CM Cuck. I saw this thing, you know, usually I skip this segment of the show, but there's that part where they're like, Cena is going to retire soon. And they give like a little, you know, insight, a little tidbit on Cena and like what he's done in his fucking career. And then they show Cena and then they're like, yo, what it do? You know what I mean? And they show CM Punk, and CM Punk's like, what it do, cucks? And I'm like, what the fuck? And CM Punk's like, you know, I am Cena's biggest rival. And I'm like, no, you're fucking not. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he's definitely one of them, but he can't be. Like, Cena's biggest rival is probably The Rock. And then after that, it's probably like Orton. And then after that, it might be The Miz. You know, it's the people that he wrestled at WrestleMania. The Big Show is a bigger rival. JBL is a bigger rival than like CM Punk, you know? Kurt Angle's a bigger rival. But it is what it is. CM Punk is definitely one of his rivals. But CM Punk starts talking, and just like AJ Lee when she cut her promo, this becomes about CM Punk, right? Him and Cucky are cut from the same cloth. CM Punk is like, you know, he's like, John Cena would exist without CM Punk. Yeah, obviously, motherfucker. Nobody gives a shit about CM Punk, right? And he's like, CM Punk would exist without John Cena. I suppose he'd exist as a mid-card nobody, but he would exist, right? And the way that he was talking, right? It's the way that Cody talks. They talk like they're equals to people like Cena, right? They talk like CM Punk and John Cena are like on the same level, but Cena is like, just because he's retiring, we're going to give it to him. It's like Cena is Cena, and CM Punk is basically Carlito, who won the world title. You know what I mean? Cody Rhodes is literally Goldust if he had won the world title. He's not better than these guys. He's not more charismatic. He's not more interesting. I mean, obviously he's better looking than like Carlito and Goldust, obviously, but you know, that's basically it. He doesn't have anything to offer. But the way that these guys talk in these promos and these interviews, right? They talk like they've actually accomplished something, you know? And it's like, yo, there's people here that deserve the title. And when I say deserve, I don't mean like when Jey Uso won the IC title, he started crying like a little bitch. It was fucking weird, by the way. People didn't talk about that enough, right? He started crying. It's not a normal reaction, bro. It's not a normal reaction. You know, they're like, oh, it's like being promoted at work. Even if it were like that, which it isn't, right? If you get promoted, do you start crying like a little bitch? You know what I mean? No. If you did that, people in the office would be like, what the fuck are you doing? You know? But anyways, like people like that piss me off. Not because they're holding opportunities from people that I like LA Knight. I don't give a fuck about that. I don't give a shit who the champion is. But I want the champion to be someone that reflects the company, right? I want this champion to be someone that's out there kicking that ass. And I want the champion to be someone that everyone can be proud of, someone that's going to get over, and more importantly, someone that's going to put people over. So I ask you, motherfucks, I ask you the central thesis of this video. Who has Cody Rhodes put over, right? He has put over nobody. In fact, if we're being honest, Cody Rhodes has buried several people. Now, some of the people that he's beaten, like Brock Lesnar and Cena, are at this point unbearable, right? Like losing 100 times to Cody Rhodes if you're Cena means fuck all. Like Cody Rhodes used to be Stardust. You know what I mean? Like Brock Lesnar is Brock Lesnar. Like Cody Rhodes can beat him 100 times, nothing changes. Arguably the same thing can be said about Roman Reigns. But everybody else, he's buried, right? He's buried the people that he's beaten. He's buried the people that he's just buried by taking their opportunities. And nobody talks about this, right? Nobody talks about, for example, people are like, one day Carmelo Hayes can do this. Like, remember when Cody Rhodes buried his ass, right? He buried him for no reason. You know, Carmelo was like this hot young star who had just signed to SmackDown, and then he has a match, and then he gets buried. Now, to be fair, you got to give the assist there to Michael Cole, the Steve Nash of burials. You know what I mean? The fucking John Stockton, the Magic Johnson of burials, the ultimate burial assister, Michael Cole, because he's always talking shit. You know, he buried Carmelo Hayes, and Carmelo Hayes has never been the same again. You know, and to be fair, I'm not saying like, woe is me, woe is Carmelo Hayes. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? I don't give a shit if Carmelo Hayes gets buried. He's not that entertaining. It's not that big of a deal. It's just like when Triple H buried Scott Steiner, who I love, by the way. People are like, I can't believe he buried Scott Steiner. And I'm like, why not? Like, they're acting like Scott Steiner's The Rock. You know what I mean? It's Scott Steiner. You know? Even Booker T, for being honest, right? He buried people, but like these people were comparable to him. You know? It's not like Triple H was this slouch and he's burying jobbers, right? Or he's burying massive stars. He was Triple H and he was burying people that are his equals, right? Like if two equals fight, one of them's going to win, one of them's going to lose. It's not just a burial, right? Like Booker T was buried by like Rene Dupree, you know what I mean? Like we don't have to worry about Triple H. But the point is, motherfucks, the point is Cody Rhodes has put nobody over. And part of being a good champion is doing that, right? As a matter of fact, I would argue that one of the ways to get people to become number one contender is for them to pin the world champion. This is exactly what happened with Braun Breaker, right? It doesn't have to be in a singles match. It can be in a multi-man match. But with Braun Breaker, it's obviously tainted because like he pinned him, but not you know, on his own accord, right? Like whatever, Austin Theory, whoever the fuck the mask guy is, came and ruined the match. So it's not exactly like this one-to-one comparison, you know? And quite frankly, I don't know if it makes sense for Bronson Reed or Braun Breaker to have any pride, or Logan Paul, I guess he's in the division, to have any pride in their win. Like it's like you barely won with assistance in a 10-man match. You also had Lesnar. You know what I mean? Like it's like you're not like Braun Breaker is not the alpha of that team. He's like the Jey Uso of that team. You know what I mean? He's like the Jey Uso of that team. He's not the Roman Reigns or the Brock Lesnar. So, you know, that's why I said this thing feels mid-card, right? But Cody Rhodes doesn't feel mid-card because when it's time to have a big moment, they're never going to give it to CM Punk. They're going to give it to Cody Rhodes. So he feels like he feels like an upper mid-carder, right? And an upper mid-carder that's holding back all of these wrestlers that, in my opinion, deserve a shot. Now, again, I'm not saying that Carmelo makes like this compelling world champion. No, he fucking doesn't, right? But like I've said before, you know, when I talk about Obafemi or Trick Williams, right, which I put in the same category as people that are overhyped that are never going to make it, you know, like that's what I believe about them, right? Same thing with Karrion Kross, but even I can concede that Karrion Kross, Obafemi, Trick Williams, even Tony D'Angelo, I can concede they're better than Gunther, you know, they deserve the same shot. But these motherfucks keep holding everybody back, and for some fucking reason, nobody talks about them the way they talked about Triple H, right? Like, for example, LA Knight, we can agree, I think most people can agree, that LA Knight is better than Gunther, than Cody Rhodes, and than CM Punk. I think most people who understand wrestling would agree with that. You know, it's also possible that, you know, that situation is the way it is. But, like, for better or for worse, I think most people would come to that conclusion. You know? Now, the reason why I bring this up is because, for better or for worse, this is where they've put us, right? They've had people, including Jey Uso, by the way, I didn't include his ass, people beating fucking, beating LA Knight left and right, you know? LA Knight can't get like a massive win if his life depended on it. Yeah, he beat Seth Rollins, but even then, it was part of Seth Rollins' ruse to like, you know, screw him over, right? Like it's all part of the same shit. But the reality is, like fundamentally, that if you don't consider these things burials, where like LA Knight could have been a massive star, you know? But you're willing to consider like Triple H pinning like Eugene a burial? Because who the fuck did Triple H bury? And trust me, I don't like Triple H. They're like, oh, he buried Booker T. Booker was like in his 30s still. You know what I mean? Maybe late 30s, but in his 30s. LA Knight's like in his mid 40s. He doesn't have the time that Booker T had to go and become champion, you know? And furthermore, like, if we're being honest, even if I concede, I should say, that Booker T was buried by Triple H, at the very least, he was buried by Triple H. You know? He wasn't buried by Jey Uso. Like, imagine if Jey Uso buried Booker T. Everyone would lose their fucking minds. You know? But that's what's happening to LA Knight. That's what's happening to Carmelo Hayes. He's getting buried by nobodies, right? Again, he might be a nobody himself, but the distance between Carmelo Hayes and Jey Uso is very close. I mean, in my opinion, Carmelo Hayes is way better, but, you know, like, I think in most people's opinions, they're very close. And the distance between Triple H and fucking Booker T was also very close. But Triple H had the upper hand. He was a multiple-time world champion in WWE. You know, WrestleMania main eventer, he was a big deal. You know, Booker T was like, you know, like the guy that lost in the Alliance, for being honest. So, with that being said, it's like, why is it okay to let Cucky and CM Punk bury LA Knight? Why is that okay, right? Why does nobody hold these assholes to the same standard? Furthermore, what about Gunther? He's buried everybody, man. Like, it's like they put up the graphic once in a while. They're like, people that lost, like, to Gunther, and it's like the entire roster, right? I mean, the people that he's wrestled, mostly it's like Tozawa and shit, but then they're like, people that have beaten Gunther, and it's like Cody Rhodes and like Jey Uso, that's it, you know? Nobody else beats this cocksucker. Like, in his entire WWE career, he's lost like 5 people. He's been there like 6 years, you know? This is like one of the biggest runs of all time, it should be. You know, Gunther should be bigger than Goldberg, but he never will be, obviously, for obvious reasons. But they are treating him like he's this guy that can never lose. And look at him, right? You mean to tell me that Gunther can lose to 4 people, but LA Knight can lose to 5 people in 1 month? You know? So that's the problem. The problem with these upper echelon guys, and at the top of this pyramid is Cody Rhodes, is that they hold everyone down in order to feel better about themselves, right? Because fundamentally, that's what it comes down to. Cody Rhodes hasn't and likely will never get over the fact that when it was time for him to be recognized, nobody gave a shit about him, right? Nobody gave a flying fuck about who Cody Rhodes was. No one, not one person cared. They said, you suck balls. You're not compelling enough to be a character on this show. So we're going to put you in a fucking mask. You know what we're going to do? Well, we're going to put you in that mask, and then we're going to call you Stardust. Then we're going to make you a jobber until you quit. Then he quit. He dyed his hair yellow. Then he started talking about his father, right? Because in the indies, nobody knows who the fuck these people are. People in the indies just go to watch a show. They're like, oh shit, Cody Rhodes is here? Stardust? Oh, he sucks. Then now he's like, oh, my dad was a legend. And then like 3 neckbeards clap and everyone starts getting behind him, you know? So good for him. I don't doubt that he did something good for himself. But fundamentally, motherfucks, this is unacceptable, you know? This is unacceptable. So with all this being said, I mean, I think it's time for a new regime, right? The CM Punk title run, whatever, who gives a fuck about that title? Seth Rollins is the rightful champion. But the Cody Rhodes title run, it's been basically 2 years in a row, man. You know? Like, I know Cena had it for a while, but that's like a novelty act. You know? That's like when remember like when WWE would go to like Italy, you know, for like a show, and then like, you know, like Nunzio would win the Cruiserweight title for a day, and then he'd lose it on like the dark match the next day, right? Just so he could go to Italy with a Cruiserweight title, or like, you know, Tajiri would come back in Japan, like that kind of shit, you know what I mean? Like, these are novelty scenarios. I understand it's the WWE title, but it's a novelty scenario. Nobody believed that Cena was going to be a long-term champion, especially considering that Cena had a limited amount of time. So it's like, if Cena were to lose the title, let's say he was still champion now, right? If there was a tournament tomorrow to determine who the next champion is going to be after Cena retires, like, Cody Rhodes would win. Nobody else would be able to win, right? So the only person that I think has the capacity to take the title from Cody is basically Gunther, right? You can make an argument for Roman Reigns, but like, nobody wants to see this shit again. You know, nobody wants Roman versus Cody, like the 15th match, you know, at WrestleMania, the 3rd WrestleMania main event involving these 2 mediocres. So with that being said, you know, Cody Rhodes can kiss my ass. I don't like everything that he's done since he's come back. He's boring. He talks like shit. He dresses like he's a fucking investigator in the 1800s, right? The only thing missing from this cocksucker is a top hat and a monocle, you know? So that being said, take care of yourself, cucks this, and have a good night up in this bitch.